to przestawię, bo zabieram. O, super, to nie spadło. kwestii.
Chyba poszła coś gdzieś teraz. Dobra, fajnie. No co teraz?
Bardzo ważne rzeczy będą się dzisiaj działy w ciągu najbliższych dni, bo tutaj właśnie będziemy mówili o sprawie, która dla Europy, czyli dla nas przecież także jest szalenie ważna.
Jest to 30-lecie Forum Ekonomicznego w Krynicy, obecnie w Karpaczu. Jest to także 30. Forum Europa.
Will celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Economic Forum and the Europe of the Carpathians. Here we're going to discuss the future of the Carpathians and the world, and we'll give the floor to young people who will shape the fortunes of the continent, and we'll talk about how to revert detrimental impacts of climate change. See you on the 7th of September.
Serdecznie pozdrawiam wszystkich widzów w kraju, za granicą. Patrzcie, jakie nasze hale przepiękne są. Zapraszamy turystów wszystkich, nie do z Polski, bo za granicę. I wam pięknie cię hali nie ma, jak tu jest Ruśnowa Polana. No, pozdrawiamy całą Polskę, Warszawę szczególnie, tamte Sejmy, nie Sejmy. Zapraszamy na wycieczkę, a nie tam siedzieć, kłócić się, a tu trzeba przyjechać góry, rozluźnić głowy trochę.
Nic o nas bez nas.
Nothing about us without us. It shouldn't be the case that things are discussed without our presence. We are at the Economic Forum at Carpathians, and we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of this unique development, Europe of the Carpathians. We are up for 3 days of excellent debates with eminent panelists to inspire us and to open our eyes. My name is Osmana Czemiński, and with the President of PKO SA, Minister Jerzy Kwieciński, will chair this 30th anniversary edition of the Europe of the Carpathians. During the 3 days ahead of us, we will discuss the future of the Europe of the Carpathians. We'll debate, we'll argue, we'll hopefully agree on the future of this region. And let me hand over to Speaker of the Polish Sejm, Marek Kuczynski, to officially open the conference, and he has been with this conference since day one. Mr. Speaker, over to you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to officially welcome you at Carpathians on this 30th edition of this conference, with perseverance and big horizons being at the background of this conference as we look at social, economic and other backgrounds of our life. And today we are opening our 30th conference with a panel that will address the future of this region of Europe, of the Europe of the Carpathians, and a group of young people. So you're more than welcome to work with us and stay with us throughout the event. Thank you. The Europe of the Carpathians, place dense with populations, ethnicities and religions, home, former home of more than 100 Nobel Prize winners, and a home to this conference that we're now beginning. I would like to welcome all the conference participants from the Franczak Institute from Sejm, which is attended by young people from Hungary and Poland, looking ahead at the biggest challenges in front of us. In a moment, we will start our first and opening panel, a refreshing panel, where we are going to give the floor to young Europeans who are shaping the continent today. What are the biggest challenges ahead of Europe? How do we meet them? We are going to discuss these topics with our members of the panel that is entitled The Young People from Central Europe about the future of Europe. But before we go into the debate, let's just watch this intro that will lay the ground for our debate.
Lengyel-magyar, két jó barát, együtt harcos, issza borát. Szeretettel üdvözlünk mindenkit, barátainkat, lengyel barátainkat, Sejmból, a nyári egyetemről.
Polak, Węgier, dwa bratanki i do szabli i do szklanki. Uczestnicy tegorocznego Uniwersytetu Letniego w Sejmie pozdrawiają wszystkich uczestników konferencji Europa Karpat.
Przyszłość Europy. Jak będzie ona wyglądała? Jakie są wyzwania, które nas czekają w przyszłości i w jaki sposób skutecznie im sprostać? Oddajemy głos młodym Europejczykom jako tym, którzy kształtują przyszłość naszego kontynentu już dziś.
Szanowni Państwo, drodzy widzowie,
Ladies and gentlemen,
drodzy goście,
dear viewers and dear guests, it's a great honor to facilitate this opening panel of the 30th edition of the Europe of the Carpathians. Because our schedule is tight, let me go straight into introductions of our eminent guests. with, let me start with the only lady, Zsófia Rácz. Mrs. Rácz is a Hungarian Undersecretary of State in the Ministry of Human Resources, Hungary. On her right is Mr. Piotr Mazurek, Government Officer for Young People, Poland. Oh, go ahead. Feel free. On my hand, Mr. Maxim Hust, lecturer in the Eastern Europe study and editor-in-chief of New Eastern Europe, and Mr. Stefan Thompson, a Polish-British journalist, columnist, and YouTuber. My name is Sebastian Movisen, and I would like to welcome you to our panel. Ladies and gentlemen, at some point in our future, Marshal Józef Piłsudski placed a lot of hope in young people. According to him, young generations should be patriotic, should be idealistic, and should have the sense of honor and responsibility. Several decades later, Saint John Paul II stressed the significance, or the significant role to be played by youth in the world and in Europe in particular. I would like to now relate to the introduction where we saw the head of the Polish-Hungarian Institute. But why? Because several days ago, Polish and Hungarian youth signed a memorandum of understanding, and I would like to ask Zsófia Rácz about this memorandum and why is it so important for us?
Thank you very much and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. You know, what I've experienced a lot of times is that when we're talking about the future of youth, young people, most of the time it's, no offense, but 50 and 60-year-old people talking about young people. So having this panel full of young people is very refreshing. Maybe we will work on the gender equality next year, but I'm happy to be here with you today. As it was mentioned, I have participated in the summer university in Krasicin 2 weeks ago, and we accepted the so-called Declaration of Krasicin. And let me tell you why this was very important. This is a summer university that is held every year. But this year was special because this year we didn't just go there, talked about and debated about the future of Europe, but we also signed the declaration. If I had to highlight two things that are the most important from the declaration is remembering and recognizing. Remembering our roots, remembering and understanding the roots of Europe, and let me highlight the Christian roots of Europe. We talked a lot about, you know, the division that is in the European Union today. There are very strong ideological divisions. One part is the conservative part, who are all for preserving and conserving the very important things that even, you know, the founding fathers like Robert Schuman, who was a Christian Democrat politician, founded when they founded the European Union. And the other one is rather the liberal side of the European Union, who are redefining these values or even replacing these values. So there's this very strong division that we see today. And we need to remember our roots, our Christian roots, to understand why the European Union was founded. And if we do that, we will understand which direction we want it to go to. Also, we have to recognize our responsibility. We young people tend to raise our voices and criticize a lot of things, which is completely fine, but we also have to provide a solution. It's never enough just to criticize. We have to find new ways to work, and we have to recognize our responsibility. Because as young people, it's up to us to shape the future of Europe, to have a vision what kind of Europe we want to. And if we are done with remembering and recognizing, I'm going to bring another word starting with an R because I'm a big fan of alliteration. It's reforming. The only way to reform the European Union is if we remember and recognize. This is what this whole declaration is about. This declaration was signed by very young, very enthusiastic Polish and Hungarian young people who understand their responsibility in having a vision and in shaping the future of Europe. And we also agreed to work together because it's not enough to decide that this is very important and this is something that we would like to achieve. We need regional cooperation. This is why it's very symbolic that it was not just the Polish young or not just the Hungarian young who signed this declaration, but it was a joint declaration. I was very happy to see that the press was, so this news was all over the press, even in Hungary. I got a lot of questions about this because this is something that now we can show that we are not just talking about how important it would be to reform the European Union, but now we have a clear future, a clear standpoint on what we want to achieve, and the rest is up to us to work together to achieve this goal.
Dziękuję uprzejmie za te streszczone wyjaśnienie. Chciałbym zapytać pana
Explanation now.
podsekretarza,
Over
pana
to
ministra
Minister Mazurek.
o jakby uzupełnienie, może ewentualnie dodanie kilka elementów.
Could you
Czy pan
perhaps
zgadza się
add
z tym, co zostało wypowiedziane, czy może
to this statement? Well, first of all, do you agree with this statement? And what is your view as a government official of that development? Thank you very much for inviting me to take part in the panel. I suppose international collaboration, especially among young people in Central and Eastern European Union, is one of the central themes that we should focus on. I'm so happy that I can be part of this debate addressing this. Having said that, I would like to emphasize that our countries develop new institutions that are geared towards working with the younger generation. And we, by doing this, demonstrate our shared view and shared approach, and our collaboration seems only natural and relevant, and it's practically happening. From the point of view of the Polish government, it is essential that we support young people, young people's civic involvement, public participation, and co-decision or participation in decision-making processes. And this is exactly what we've been doing in our country. Because first we established a new body, a youth dialogue council with Prime Minister and ministries being represented and involved in regular dialogue with young or youth NGOs and local government youth councils and student councils, etc. And this body is involved in a number of projects during the pandemic, where we faced new challenges, providing aid to those in need, taking up the digital challenge as we moved from offline to online, as we went gradually digital, and we had to deliver content services and interactions online, but also see, as we involved ourselves in international collaboration, the UN delegation, and I know that Mrs. Żółwiak has taken part in this. We select young people who meet young people from other countries, and they will debate issues on the or at the UN forum. So our delegates, our youth delegates, have been participating in this in Carpathians and in Jelenia Góra in the Young Youth Leaders Forum, where I participated in the opening forum. I had the pleasure of doing this earlier today. Also, the World Forum of Internet Management, IGF, and this event is going to take place this season in Katowice in Poland. We had an associating or accompanying event to this event, where we addressed the ethical aspects or ethical dimensions of artificial intelligence. We have to look at technology and moral aspects, ethical aspects of this. And young people from Poland, with the support of the government, initiated a debate for thousands of interlocutors from up and down the country. And this is thanks to the support of the Polish government, who has created a framework. At the local government level, we've also created a new framework in the form of youth councils, empowered youth councils that can have the right to review and initiate draft legislation, and a number of other activities are part and parcel of the missions, and they can also be involved internationally. So this is our contribution to the debates.
Thank you very much. You touched upon many themes, and I can see that Jehor Statny has just joined us. He is the former Minister of Education and Higher Education of Ukraine. I know that it wasn't easy for you to get here. You had some problems on the border, but I'm very happy that you have joined us. And Sviatoslav Jurasz, a deputy for Verkhovna Rada from Ukraine, is going to join us online, and he's the youngest member of parliament in the history of Ukraine. So a great round of applause for him. And now, let us move further east. And I have a question to Maxim Rust. So, how are the initiatives like the ones that were discussed by Piotr Mazurek perceived in Belarus? Belarus is still outside of the European Union, but we have been trying to build strong, close relationships. So, how could we activate all the initiatives or similar initiatives? So could you discuss existing measures, existing initiatives, and could you give us some ideas about what we could do in the future? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. What Sebastian commented on is a really vast array of topics, but Belarus, right now, for the Belarusian youth, the European Union is a symbol of freedom and of well-being. Poland and Lithuania have become countries that show the Belarusians what European Union is. They stand for the symbol of the European Union. So when the Belarusians mention Poland or Lithuania, they think about the good standard of living, European standard of living in Poland. But apart from this theme of liking Europe, liking everything that is European, apart from that, we need to look at data. So modern business or modern the modern economy shows us that Europe is strong. For example, the Vilnius airport services 3 times as many passengers as the one in Minsk. So after 2020, Europe became a goal for Belarusian youth, in a way. It became a territory where you can go, leave, you can leave for, you can live there, you can do your job, you can be active, and despite the anti-European propaganda and anti-Polish propaganda in Belarus. The Belarusian society is becoming more and more pro-European. And when it comes to European values and to values, I think that the kind of discussion hasn't started yet in Belarus. Belarusians who come to Poland are surprised. They don't know anything about the political situation. And very often they tell me, Max, they have this privilege of having a really harsh debate. That's democracy. Belarusians, the Belarusian youth see it as a great value, being able to have a political conflict within a democratic system. But I think that what really attracts people is the economy. People decide to emigrate to Poland, to the European Union, because they want to live well. They want to have a decent life. And it's only then when they start seeing how democracy can function, how it can work. And now, coming back to the issue of challenges for the Belarusian youth, I would see two challenges. First of all, we need support, and this is connected with the situation that started in 2020. So here, I mean, all kinds of aid and support programs, for example, like those of Polish universities. And this is about scholarships, this is about grants. So we know that a more ambitious, overarching European program is being prepared. Sometimes people say, oh, more scholarships. People say that that's not the way to go. But, ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a globalized world. And some of those people who will be educated in Poland or in other European countries might go back to Belarus, or they might stay in Poland. But it will be still possible for them to do something good for Belarus. And additionally, I don't expect everybody to be a hero of opposition, to be a dissident, to risk their life. I think that what we lack is some kind of institutionalized youth exchange. I know that there are such organizations operating Polish-German youth exchange. When it comes to Ukraine, there are similar projects, but these are just small-scale projects. And I think that it would be great if we had a special state institution that would deal with the youth exchange between Belarus and Poland. Now, let me speak to values that you mentioned. You said that young Belarusians see Europe, let's say, in a very optimistic way. And now I would like to ask my guests on my right-hand side. Ferenc Olmasi is a French-Hungarian journalist, editor-in-chief of the Visegrad Post. And we also have Stefan Thompson with us. They are, let's say, from Western Europe. They are Westerners. Stefan is half Polish, Ferenc is half Hungarian. So I would like to ask them the following question. Do you think that the European Union is perceived as a kind of paradise on earth where everything goes in the right direction?
Ferenc, allez-y. Après vous, j'insiste. Right, ja powiem po angielsku. Right, I think the perspective that I have I'm not actually half British. I was mainly born and raised in the UK. I'm actually half South African, but I've spent most of my life in Western Europe. I think I'd like to answer this question from an Eastern European perspective, or a Central Eastern European perspective. I have never been more hopeful about this region, or its people, or its future. I have never been more filled with hope and optimism, looking back at what your generation has achieved in the last 30 years after the fall of the USSR, and the transformation after communism. 27 years of uninterrupted economic growth in Poland at an average rate of 4.2% GDP. 8-fold increase in GDP per capita. Estonia last week overtook Spain's GDP per capita. The things that have happened in the last 30 years in this region are incredible. I have never been more filled with hope because I know many of the young generation that is currently starting to take on leadership roles in our region and is starting to develop it even further, building on the legacy that you have left us after the transformation. I think that that is the key to the future of this region, is the development of a form of an arrogance in this region about who we are, what we have achieved, and where we are going. What we lack currently, what your generation certainly lacked, I think in part because of the discrepancy in GDP between our region and the West, is a self-confidence. I see in my generation a great confidence, and I believe that we must build on this arrogance and to take it further. I think that also that what can be achieved in the next 30 years is very much based on what has been achieved in the past. My one fear is that there is a certain lack of confidence and still a certain slight inferiority complex about the West, that we are unable to fully draw on the mistakes that we're currently watching Western Europe make. And that fills me with a certain worry, but I think that all in all, that is what we have to look at to define who we are. We are not the East of the West. We are not the West of the East. We are very much the European heartland. And this is our time. And we must ensure that the opportunities that we are presented with are capitalized on and taken and used to their fullest extent. That's what I have to say, really. Ferenc, after you.
Hello, sorry. First of all, sorry for being late. I thought it was 3 p.m. and we had some problem to reach the place. But I'm here, and thank you all for your understanding. Well, I love your optimism, Stefan. I truly do. But I do not share it fully. I like to share it, though, but I moved from Paris to Hungary in 2010. At this time, nobody understood why. Of course, I am half Hungarian, so I had also some personal reasons for that. But first of all, I couldn't stand anymore the delinquency of the West and of France in particular. I'm half French. I still love France. I'm still in love in its culture. And I still cherish what remains of this culture. But I couldn't stand being an impotent witness of a collapse, of a disaster, seeing everything I love going to dust. This is something that is not happening yet in Central Europe, but let's face it, France, 50 years ago, was much more conservative than Poland or Hungary today. All right? So it might be really quick, because the same, what brought France to this situation is also happening here in Central Europe already. We see, especially since 2015, when the Visegrad Group took a stance against massive, non-controlled extra-European immigration. That was a first blow for the EU coming from this region. This was also a strong awakening for many Central Europeans that understood that we don't have to follow Western Europe in everything. We can have our own choices, and we are European exactly as much as they are, and we are legitimate to talk about the future of Europe. We should always keep that in mind. In my opinion, this is really the key. And what Stefan was talking about, this complex of inferiority, indeed, this is something, as a French, I see that very well. When I'm in Hungary, when I say I'm Hungarian, also when I travel in the region, it does not have the same effect than when I introduce myself as a French man. So we should rethink, be able to understand that things are changing. We see Europe now is in a very difficult situation. Globalization brought a lot of wealth in Europe. This is obvious. But it brought also many different things, especially big changes on the cultural level. And we did lose a lot of our moral values that was our strength and the core of what is Europe. Without this, I don't know if we can last long, and economic is not enough to make up a society. So if we lose our values, if we lose the Greek ethos, the Roman concept of law and state, and most of all the Christian values, if we lose this, Europe is lost, because this is what defines Europe. It's not just geography. So we should keep that in mind at a time where we are facing, and government have to face difficult times, because we are undergoing some kind of cynization. We see well that some people, some strength want the social credit, the control of the population on the model of the Chinese way. The neo-Marxist Davos project is also about control. And this is not something that we should allow. I believe that we have all the keys to remain a strong continent of cooperating sovereign nations.
Dziękuję bardzo, Ferenc, za te słowa inspirujące. Chcąc dać możliwość każdemu z panelistów...
I would like to give an opportunity to other panelists to speak, so I will ask Jehor Stadny to take the floor.
Mr. Ferenc Olmashi, I didn't use interpretation, but I think he used the word degeneration or degeneracy. It's a strong word, isn't it? Do you believe that in Ukraine, in the education system in this country, there's a concern about the wrong sort of direction the West is appearing to go to put it euphemistically? Is there a readiness to propose an alternative way? Perhaps to take the best of the EU, that is the economic freedoms and economic mechanisms, but to keep the best of Central and Eastern European region where we want to preserve these things. And there's what is known as Carpathicum College or Collegium Carpathicum. I don't know if you're familiar with this initiative. It's an association of universities of Visegrad group countries plus Romania. Can this platform, or can such a platform, create a mechanism that will help young people in Europe to share their ideas? And the second initiative is the Conference on the Future of Europe in the EU. I would like to ask you to comment on this. Is this conference effective? Will it be relevant? Will it bring results, or is it doomed from day one? I know it's a lot of issues. First of all, apologies for being late. It's kind of hard to cross the border. I will speak English because I used all my Polish at the border, so there's nothing left.
What I fear is actually, so that by looking at the West and making those contacts, exchanges, etc., we learn how it could be better, but we often forget what you need to do to achieve this condition. And what you need not only to do, but how you need to behave, which is very, very important. And as a person from the education field, I see that I don't think that we are successful with teaching our kids and youngsters to be responsible. It could be a strange thing, but I see many Soviet people inside those people who were born in independent Ukraine. This is very paradoxical, actually, that you could communicate as vice rector. 3 days ago, I finished orientation course with our freshmen, first year, newcomers. And speaking to them, I see that they are not taught properly to bear any responsibility at all. That some actions could be followed by consequences, that they are literally responsible for crucial issues of our future of the country, of future of the region, of future of the planet. And what I saw each time, this is not in any case, in all cases, but what I see that they expect that somebody will do something for them. No, that you don't feel this like proactivity that I will try by myself, I will do it by myself. Well, not to mention here cheating while studying. Where from? Where from? So I think that the lack of responsibility is one of my fears. And about like different forms, well, myself as a product of academic exchange, because I'm the alumni of Sejm Europy Wschodniej. So I think that we need to just do it more often. It's not enough anytime. You need to do more often more exchanges. But what we need to, where we need to pay attention, are they mutual? Or this is only one way process? Are they symmetrical? Or are they asymmetrical? Because the best result would be where it would be symmetrical and mutual.
Dziękuję bardzo za te słowa. Został nam jeden panelista.
For these words, we have one remote online panelist, and I would like to ask if we connected to Mr. Jurasz, MP, is everything working? Because I would like to ask you, sir, to perhaps react to Mr. Stadny's intervention. Nie wiem, czy...
Wszystkim rozumiem polsku, tylko mój polski nie jest mocny. Przepraszam. Basically, if possible, I'll continue in English. In general, all the points that were raised by all the actors on the panel are very clear, very much needed to try and define ourselves. And the battle in Ukraine is as strong as in all of your countries. It is clearly our desire in our pursuit of Europe and Euro-Atlantic space to try and see the identity we have as something worth keeping and something that's leading us onward into that quest. And basically in that pursuit, we aren't just hoping for the best. We are also launching various initiatives, various steps. When you were introducing me, you mentioned various points, but basically one of the things that I'm most proud of is the fact that I'm leading 2 caucuses in our parliament. First caucus is the biggest one in our history, Values, Dignity, Family. making a very clear point in our parliament that our parliament does not have a conservative party, neither has it a liberal party. Every party is a conservative party. We have a constitutional majority of members of parliament who signed together for a clear understanding that as far as our national perspectives, we are willing to keep them. And we will not bend no matter what is forced upon us. We have a right to try and be democratic, that is to express what our nation feels to be true, and that is all those notions of values and dignity and family, which is the very point of your discussion. And many points I've heard is about abrogation of those in pursuit of various ideals, which certainly aren't European, but are purely ideological and hence pointless in that. That, basically, it is only a step to the other pursuit that I have in parliament. There's the Intermarian caucus, which is the second biggest in the history of Ukraine. Basically trying to showcase that initiatives that we are taking, three initiatives is the Polish perspective on the discussion, but we have thankfully signed the Lublin Triangle as well as the Declaration of Five Presidents in Warsaw a few months ago. It's clearly trying to define that our states see their future in bringing our states closer in every possible way. And our parliament will not be away from that process. And we are trying with our caucus to define for the entirety of our discussion in Europe that our parliament is very much behind that effort and very much willing and able to define that effort in the steps we can take to try and align ourselves in every way with our neighbors who have achieved so much. Because certainly for us, I was hearing the points made by the Belarus and Belarusian perspective on the matter. The very same perspective remains here. In Ukraine, that is. In 1991, Ukraine actually was slightly higher in GDP than Poland. It is certainly very clear for any Ukrainian who goes to Poland to study, such as yours truly, and I studied for a good year in Warsaw, to see that Poland has managed to succeed in all that we are trying to succeed. And that journey is full of lessons, invaluable lessons, for our journey into the future. And that journey should start and build on our values and not try to derogate them and throw them away in that pursuit. Too many of my colleagues are very willing to do that. And it is my job in parliament to try and unite a coalition of Ukrainian actors who are willing both to pursue the West and pursue that with self-respect. That is understanding that as a democratic nation, we should try and understand that what our nation feels to be true is not a mistake, not a problem, not a failure. It is but the reality of what entirety, all the generations that were passing us by saw as what they felt to be reality. And it is our job to try and define that and keep that in every way. And to work with you, great people, especially in Poland, especially with wonderful individuals that are present in your panel with whom I had a pleasure of cooperating continuously, to try and build that joint idea and then to define Europe as when it comes to the questioning of its identity, bringing those ideals that so many are willing to throw away again back into the frame, because I don't believe that all is lost. Discussion in history knows many ups and downs, and it is very important for my country to learn the best lessons of integration into the West, such as the one from Poland, and in that pursuit to try and build on that success, joining in that effort in defining Europe's path.
Dziękujemy bardzo za te zdania, za tą wypowiedź.
Thank you very much for this intervention. I would like to share one practical news with my fellow panelists. When the panel is over, don't run, please, because I would like to hand over the diploma of the Europe of the Carpathians, a commemorative anniversary diploma. So please stay with me. I would like to hand it over to you in person. Frankly, I would like to admit that it's very hard for me to recapitulate all the points that have been raised. A number of them have been on the table, and correct me if I'm wrong. Some of them are some of the things are very clear. We have to tighten our ties between our countries. Young people, the young generation, must have strong bonds in Central and Eastern Europe. We have to uphold our fundamental values, Christianity and family. This is rudimentary and fundamental to any society. I don't believe there's any controversy between us when it comes to this. Furthermore, we have to be pragmatic. There's this saying, the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. I suppose we should bear this in mind. I apologize that we won't have enough time for round two, but I suppose you all have contributed to this excellent conversation already, and I do encourage people to seek the panelists' activities, projects outside of this debate, so follow them, please, and look them up and see what they are doing to make Europe a better place. Without further ado, I would like to thank you very much indeed for your participation. I would like to thank our guests, and let's have a big hand of applause, please. So let me now hand over the diplomas I mentioned a while ago. Thank you. And a big hand for our moderator, Sebastian.
Szanowni Państwo, witamy ponownie.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome after the break. Let me introduce the next panel. It is going to be a strikingly interesting, spectacular panel. We are going to talk to the heads of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs. We are going to host Zbigniew Rau and Peter Szijarto of the Polish and Hungarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, in current times when so much is happening all over the world with a new administration and diplomacy in the United States, with the biggest economic crisis and sanitary crisis since the Second World War, we might easily say that those past few years have been really eventful. So I believe that this conversation between the Ministers of Foreign Affairs will be also a very interesting event in those eventful times. We are in a very difficult moment of international relations. The United States have decided that China is their main competitor, their rival. The United States have decided to reduce their involvement in other areas of the world, including Middle East and Europe. The United States are trying to give over the responsibility for stabilizing some of the regions to their key allies. At the same time, we can see a growing Russian imperialism, which is a threat to the stability of Central Europe. At the same time, Europe is going through a crisis. It's the third crisis. We have had the financial crisis, the economic crisis, and the COVID pandemic. As a result, international situation is really volatile. And Central Europe, the Central European region, is somewhere in between the European Union, Russia, the United States, and China. And we need to find a way to face those new challenges.
Ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished panelists have been already introduced, so my role is limited only to start the panel. I have the privilege, and I am especially honored to be the moderator of this panel, the panel that unites the Hungarian and the Polish Ministers of Foreign Affairs. I have to confess that I have the privilege to cooperate with Professor Zbigniew Rau as a professor of law in a preparation of book about the Central European roots of democracy and the rule of law. And what we found is that those roots are in Hungary. This is the Aryan Bulia of Andras II of 2022, with the famous principle ius resistandi, the right to resist against unlawful oppression of those who exercise the power. So what I would like to stress is that our Polish-Hungarian ties are not based only on common in Poland sentiments demonstrated in the best way in the common proverb Magyar Lengyel ketjo borat, egyet horcele szisa borat, which means Polak, Węgier, dwa bratanki, do szabli i do szklanki.
but as well in that historical memory of our friendship and the awareness of the fact that the top level of the power of Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth took place at the reign of Batory István, when Polish-Lithuanian forces with Ukrainian Cossacks liberated Belarusian Polotsk and Latvian Cesis from the invasion of Ivan the Terrible of Russia. Having said this short introduction, I would like to ask some questions to both of our distinguished guests, the questions about the contemporary international situation. And the first one is, what are the geopolitical challenges Europe is confronted with today? And an auxiliary one, what is the way Europe should meet them? Does Europe have indispensable instruments to deal with those problems? And if not, what should be done to create them? Mr. Ministers, the floor is yours. I think we start with our guests.
Like national language? Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation, and also thank you very much for Zbyszek to say that we should speak national language. I don't know whether it will hinder anybody from understanding what I'm gonna say, because what he's gonna say is gonna be okay, I guess, for everybody. You think that I should speak Hungarian? Well, the translation, I think we definitely do have. The question is that whether the audience does have headphones or not. That's the question. But, so maybe I answer the first question in English, and then as soon as everybody has the headphones, we can switch to Hungarian. So, first of all, I'd like to express my appreciation for this invitation, for the organizers, number one. Number two, I really appreciate the fact that I can sit here on a stage with Zbyszek, as I was allowed to call him just very recently, because in him I really found a friend, but not exclusively in political terms, but in its real and original meaning. And I really do appreciate that that you have given me this experience, really. Now, when it comes to the challenges ahead of Europe, I think the biggest challenge of ours is that we are not ready to approach the challenges and difficulties and debates of ours in an honest manner. I think the biggest challenge is hypocrisy. The biggest challenge is application of double standards. And the biggest challenge is the absence of real democratic debates within the European Union. Because what we experience currently is that because of the reasons you have listed in your video, because of these three major crises hitting Europe, we definitely do have debates about how we should tackle these challenges and how we should make European Union stronger than it is currently. And during these debates, those who represent positions which do not fall in line with the mainstream, they are immediately considered as non-European, as anti-European, and we are immediately pushed on the sideline. So, in the name of democracy, we who represent positions not falling in line with the mainstream are being pushed out from the debates. And I think this is very, very anti-democratic. And as long as there's no room, no chance, no possibility for a democratic, balanced type of debate in the European Union based on mutual respect, we will not be able to give the proper answers for the challenges which we are confronted with. Here we have the migration issue, where some big European member states are just about to commit the similar kind of mistakes they had committed in 2015, when they basically have announced an open invitation to everybody who wanted to come to Europe for various reasons. Now, some Western European countries are about to commit the same mistake. We have the issue of making an ideological debate of everything. We should not be over-ideologized, actually. And here we definitely have the problem of losing our competitiveness in the world. Just imagine within 20 years, our share of global GDP has shrinked from 21 to 18%, while China's share has increased from 4% to 18%. And while we are having the share of global GDP at the level of 18%, we distribute 27% of all social aids and social expenses of the world. 18% of global GDP, 27% of global social spending. And I think it's hardly sustainable. These challenges have to be met. And once again, I want to emphasize that as long as there's no real chance for an honest debate, for a debate based on mutual respect, I hardly see the way that we can overcome these challenges, and it's going to be very complicated to make European Union strong again.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much.
Muszę się przyzwyczaić w Polsce
Dear
do
Piotr,
twojego polskiego imienia.
Peter, you have to get used to the Polish version of your name. So it's either Peter, Peter in Hungary, but in Poland you will be Piotr. And I must tell you the following. I would like to thank you for your kind words. I'm really touched by the fact that you said that you are very happy to be here. But I would say that the pleasure is ours. And now, moving on to the subject matter. Let me change the roles. You are the economist, I'm a lawyer. But you started with discussing ideological matters. And I would like to start with trying to put a diagnosis on the troubles of Europe. Let me start with economic issues. And then I'll discuss institutional matters. And then I'll try to sum it up and put it in the following context. The biggest challenge that we are facing now in Europe, but talking about Europe, we mean the European Union. So the biggest challenge is to save the European project. I'm fully convinced that it's worth taking decisive action to save the project. I'm sure that in those groups of people who are close to us, who are close to our understanding of Europe, that is, they appreciate the European integration, but they are not very happy with the outcomes of the integration. I'd say that in our circles, the initiative of rebuilding the European project should be launched. So what do the challenges consist of? When Poland, Hungary and other countries joined the European Union in 2008, and let me remind you, this was after a long accession process, we were accessing a totally different union. We wanted to share the well-being with others, and we wanted to benefit from the free market. We wanted the free market based on 4 freedoms. This was the essence of European integration for us back then. So the freedom of movement of people, capital, workers and services. Today, the situation looks quite bleak when it comes to those freedoms. There is a tendency to use protectionist measures. So I would say that what encouraged us to become a member of the European Union today has been limited, has eroded. That's one thing. And I would say that this is an economic challenge to fight protectionism. I could quote a number of directives that go in the direction of protectionism. Another dimension is the institutional one. We were fascinated by the community based on the law. We were fascinated by the opportunity to act together within the framework of the treaties. The treaties that were created thanks to the decisions of member states that make up the European Union. That's the institutional foundation of the European Union. And coming back to this foundation, we were enchanted by it. Nation-states, fully sovereign, gave a part of its sovereignty, of its prerogatives, to the Union. The aim was to find synergies and to realize the potential of each and every member state.
And today we see no smaller threats to the European fundamentals than the matter of free market. And they are pivotal threats because European Union institutions, which are inherently not enjoying a broad and democratic mandates, as national institutions appear to be increasing their remit far beyond the treaties, far beyond the mandate inscribed in the European agreements, European treaties. Why is it a threat? Why is it a risk in the context of the question that has been asked by the professor here? Because there seems to be a great recognition of the treaties amongst the European population. By the way, the European Constitution was going too far, and it received a deadly blow through referenda. Why has it been blown a deadly blow? Because there seems to be a search for increased powers as a substitute to the European Constitution's project. We see it in the judicial activism in the European Court of Justice, where rulings tend to go beyond the remit of the institutions. And it's well described and well known from the United States, where the Supreme Court has often been submitting itself to such temptations. So with respect to the economy and institutions, these are the biggest and most fundamental ingredients. However, there's another dimension, a non-EU dimension, that is a challenge for Europe. What I mean is the question whether we who have created the European Union, guided by the values, whether we have the right, once we are in, do we have the right to assume that those who wish to become members because they share the same value should be kept out? And should the door be closed for them, the sort of the same door that we went through? And I understand you will recognize what I'm talking about, and certainly about Western Balkans, countries that have been waiting in the line for 19 or 20 years. Then let's look east of Poland. Let's look at Ukraine. The situation is maybe not similar, but very close. Show me another society which would be ready to offer the gift of blood for the European values, as the Ukrainians did. And we do remember the Dignity Revolution. We do remember the Ukrainian aspirations, where they put into the constitution the imperative to seek EU and NATO membership. The fundamental question that has a moral aspect is whether we have the right to passively look at the door being closed, and the mainstream, as Piotr said, is not even giving any hints as to how we should act and behave in the wake of, or in the context of the closed door. And secondly, if there's a vacuum created in the Western Balkans or in the Eastern Partnership against society's expectations, against the pursuits of the local political elites, the European values that are underlying and will they survive there in the first place? if there are different political agendas, if there are different institutions with different values. There's no vacuum in politics. Gaps will be filled, and so I suppose this is the biggest challenge ahead of Europe, and the sheer size of that challenge is enormous. And this fits well with what Piotr said, but I was a bit professorial in my expansion and elaboration.
Two main issues that emerged from your answers. The first one is the question about the desirable political nature of the European Union. You, Mr. Minister, stressed the fact, quite obvious for normal people, let me say like that in each democracy opposition is not only a natural but as well an indispensable factor in the political scene, while within the European Union system those who are in opposition to the mainstream are treated as the enemy of the entity and not just the competitors to power. So this inclines me to ask the question, what kind of the European Union do we need? As I have understood, as opposition, we should have our own vision of the desirable shape of the European Union. So what is this vision? What is the desirable shape of the Union to which we should push the political decisions and changes?
So first, let me stress that we Hungarians are interested in a strong European Union. But we are interested in a strong European Union which is based on strong member states. Member states which are allowed to stick to their heritage, to their national identity, to their history, their culture and religion. Strong European Union based on strong member states. This is our strategic view. We totally reject the extremist position of the federalists saying that we should establish something what we could call United States of Europe. Now we definitely reject that. To speak practically, we don't want any more competencies to be given to Brussels from the member states. No more competencies. I think that the recent challenges and the recent crises we have been facing have shown very clearly that institutions might be able to lead us when the circumstances are absolutely peaceful. But once circumstances are becoming turbulent, which has been the case now, we need leadership. We need leaders and we need leadership. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have witnessed that when it comes to the pandemic, for example, then the responses made on the level of the member states or the responses made based on intergovernmental cooperation proved to be much quicker and much more successful compared to those measures which have been made by the institutions in Brussels. So our position is strong EU based on strong member states. And in order to be competitive, globally speaking, I mean, in order to make the European Union competitive, globally speaking, we need competitive member states. And based on that, we should allow the competition inside as well. So, for example, when it comes to this issue of global minimum tax, okay, we reject that totally. Because, number one, we think it's a communistic type of proposal, because it basically would like to take away competitive advantage which is based on economic decisions and policies by regulatory measures. If the right of the member states, if the right of the respective countries to decide about their own tax policies is taken away from the member states and the respective countries, that will cause another big backdrop when it comes to competitiveness. Because for example, us Hungarians, we do apply the lowest tax rates of Europe. When we entered office back in 2010, we have deleted the progressive tax system and we have introduced flat tax. Currently we apply a 9% corporate income tax rate flat and a 15% personal income tax rate flat. Now when it comes to the corporate income tax, if the global minimum tax is being introduced as it is supposed to be introduced currently, then we should increase our corporate income tax rate by 6%. And you know, our government is being so successful in economic terms because of our tax policy, which was always based on tax reduction. So now we would be forced to increase tax, which kills competitiveness. And we should not forget about one thing. There are preconditions. There are preconditions based on which you can apply low tax rates. What are these preconditions? Mostly, this is the very disciplined way of budgetary and financial policies. And conducting disciplined budgetary and financial policies is not always easy. Because in order to do so, you need to keep the level of redistribution low. So it's a political challenge sometimes. It's a complicated political work to be done. And now those who were not brave or not ready to conduct such disciplined financial and budgetary policies, now they would like to take away the advantage of ours on low tax rates, which were based on these complicated political decisions. So, sorry to be so complicated, but when it comes to our vision regarding the future of the European Union, we need to be competitive and we need to give the space for the member states to get strong. And I can absolutely agree with the professor, with my friend, with the minister, that enlargement is one of the key aspects. If European Union is not able to enlarge, then we will lose a lot of competitiveness on the global scene. Because we have lost the United Kingdom, through which we lost 15% of the GDP of the European Union. We were not able to complete the negotiations about the framework agreement with Switzerland. And we were not able to make any kind of forward progress when it comes to the enlargement. And I agree with Zbigniew, who says that there's no vacuum in global politics. If we are not able to integrate the Western Balkans, there will be other competitors to enter the stage. And then I'm so frustrated when we come together as European foreign ministers and we always listen to the complaints of the colleagues of ours that, you know, Russia is being present, Turkey is being present, I don't know who is being present, and then in the Western Balkans, and our question is that why don't we take part in the competition? You cannot win a competition if you don't take part. And we Europeans would have the best chance to win this competition for the Western Balkans. And without enlargement, we're not going to be strong, definitely.
Próbując odpowiedzieć na to samo pytanie, jakiej
at an answer to the same question about the type of Europe we expect, or what we expect it to be, I would say medically. First, we expect Europe that doesn't harm our economic development. As Piotr has alluded to the taxation issue. Primum non nocere, the medical creed, has a much broader reading, I believe, and it touches upon institutions and legal frameworks. And this is what I would like to focus on. The sort of union that we badly need is one where institutions do not try to instrumentalize legislation within the EU with a view to achieving short-term gains. Short-term gains in the context of political games, competition between countries, or between political families within the EU. I suppose also it is essential that political gains, political goals should not be pursued by abusing one's own position or by abusing the position of one's political family in the EU institutions. Last but not least, and in fact this may be the most important aspect of all, and we seem to be painfully affected by this in modern times, and Piotr has alluded to this, the unprecedented project of European integration that we want so badly must not be abused by anyone, taken advantage of by anyone, or used instrumentally to seek political agendas. A political offensive of whatever color should be given good riddance from Europe. Should you be inclined in waging political attacks, they will be allowed to do so in a democracy, but to capture European institutions in order to do that is highly inappropriate. Because the society of the Union and many would like to deny it. Are pluralistic. I would even say European nations are pluralistic towards one another and towards the outside world. We will always find those who are perhaps more right-wing or left-wing in their identity. We will always find conservatives and liberals. However, no one ideological option should feel it's the only sovereign and the only empowered entity with a mandate to use European institutions. Because that will lead to social engineering based on and underlined by ideological gnosis, which inherently will lead to alienation of a significant part, maybe a majority, of the society of the European Union. The national societies, the national communities. This will breed Euro indifference and Euro skepticism, and then it will escalate into more critical positions.
Absolutnie fundamentalna.
I believe it's absolutely fundamental. No matter who we are,
Czy jesteśmy bardzo, bardzo tradycyjnymi konserwatywnymi,
very traditional conservatists or radical anarchists. Ideological disputes can be led, conducted at home in our national states, in our states. We must never feel that European Union institutions are allies and supporters of one ideology, and we should never feel that anyone is left out or alienated. This will be the beginning of the end of the European project. Anyone who is in favor of this project must be very cautious and aware of what it means. There's another point to be raised when we discuss our expectations of the European Union, and more often we hear that unanimity should be removed from the policy-making mechanism, that we should be ruled by majority, especially when it comes to foreign policy. We would, by doing this, we would get rid of the systemic imposition of international policies by the strongest ones, with the sensitivities, with that would create a majority sensitivity being the guiding sensitivity in Europe against those who are not part of the majority. That would again lead to alienation of an increasingly large proportions of communities, but it is, at the end of the day, about the foreign policy of the EU as a whole, including political elites. If you represent a country which is not capable of pursuing at least part of its interests, while responding to the general public opinion, you will be inclined to be more and more Eurosceptical.
What we really need to remember is that if we divert from the good, tried and tested ways of finding consensus within the European Union, and we know that finding a consensus is a must in the European foreign policy. This is what binds us together when it comes to the threats and challenges for the European Union. And we must remember that we are living in a very unpredictable and volatile world.
We still have two main issues in our debate: the future of the European Union and the desirable scale of enlargement. What is crucial in what you have said is that we have our own Polish and Hungarian experience in functioning in multinational entities. That was Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and Habsburg Austro-Hungarian monarchy. We know our own mistakes, and the main conclusion is that over-centralization is not helping to maintain the construction. It's rather a destructive factor. Let me add one more observation. When you have talked about taxes, we both know, Poles and Hungarians, that the taxation system should be consulted with citizens this is what the parliaments have been created for, and we know it since Lajos Noć time, since Košice privilege. Yeah? So this is our knowledge in this part of Europe. Why I'm saying this? To ask what kind of cooperation do we need within the European Union in Central Europe? I mean, what is the potential of V4, of Free Sea Initiative, of Bucharest 9, how the synergy of the experience of our nations can be successfully used to change the Union in that direction that we need. And the second important question, what are the borders of the enlargement of the European Union?
Okay, let's make an attempt in Hungarian. All right. So if there will be if there is a big number of participants in the audience who stand up to get the headphones, then we will switch back. Szóval, ha önök azt kérdezik tőlem, hogy a magyar külpolitikában
If you ask me now
mi a lelke, vagy mi a szíve közepe,
about the spirit of Hungarian external policy, I would say that's the Visegrad cooperation.
hogy a visegrádi együttműködésnek
I would say that we know full well that this is thanks to the V4 cooperation that we Hungarians, together with the Czechs, the Slovaks, the Poles,
ügyben tudtunk eredményt elérni,
we can and we have managed to get results in many European matters, and it wouldn't have been possible to achieve it had we done it alone.
Persze a lengyelek helyzete kicsit különös, mert Lengyelország egy nagy ország.
Of course, the situation of Poland is different because Poland is a big country. Even if Poland says something on its own, it has a certain weight. We are a smaller country. That's why that kind of cooperation within the European Union is so important for us, even more important than for Poland. But I deeply believe that also Poland can gain more thanks to V4 cooperation. Let us ask the following question. What has been the greatest success of the V4 cooperation? Let's say from the perspective of the future of the European Union. And then I think that we could really stand proud and say the following. If we haven't been so fully engaged in the V4 cooperation, we would be now engaging in burden-sharing measures, and we would have to accept migrant quotas. But we stood together, we stood strong. We managed to fight for our principles. We in Poland, in the Czech Republic, in Slovakia, decided that we have the right to say who is going to be accepted in our countries and who is not. So it's our decision to say who will be allowed to live in our country. If we had given in to the Western pressure those 5 years ago, if our unity had been broken, today we would have binding quotas for migrant relocation. Another very important aspect of that cooperation is that we, Central Europeans, we, as the members of a Visegrad group, should realize our economic power. So we might say that Germany is the flagship economy of the European Union. But if you look at the numbers of Germany's trade with the Visegrad Group, you'll see that our trade balance is 70% higher than the trade between Germany and France. This shows that we are the backbone of the European economy, and we are the backbone of the German economy. Today, I would say that our policy is really commonsensical, it's really sound, and that's why our region has become one of the most attractive and competitive investment areas in Europe. In my ministry, at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, I am responsible for trade policy. Since 2014, Hungary has had record numbers of foreign investment year on year. In 90% in this race for investment, those who are competing with us are other Visegrad Group countries. This is because our economic policies are robust, are really well thought of. That's why we have become one of the most interesting investment destinations globally. So I think that this is within our best interest to keep up our cooperation. There is a Hungarian saying, if somebody says that you will die quickly, the thing will continue. This is what we have heard about the Visegrad Cooperation. But this is the thing of the past, where this is going to collapse. But I believe that this might make us invincible. And I'm very proud that we have never let criticism hamper our cooperation. And here, I would really be an advocate of further European integration. We need the Western Balkans to join the European Union. With a clear vision of the future and peace in the Western Balkans, our future can be really prosperous. We still remember our accession talks. We still remember how it was to hear year after year that we need to wait another 5 years. So we need to do everything we can to keep the trust in integration in Western Balkans. In Central Europe, we are convinced that Western Balkans need to join the European Union. And Serbia is the key country here. Serbia is the key country in the Balkans. We have to accept Serbia, as it will definitely stabilize the Balkans, especially Western Balkans. But to do it, we need to take a step in that direction. Thank you very much, Peter. I'm very happy that you spoke in your mother tongue. It makes me feel better that I'm using the language of Mickiewicz in Poland. Ladies and gentlemen, coming back to the international institutions that we are a part of. Indeed, we would have to discussing the biggest of those institutions, that is NATO and the European Union. But at the same time, we need to remember about creating synergies. That's our great satisfaction that Hungary or Poland can create their own international institutions that are suited to their interests and that are created for those countries to fulfill their potential. To be frank, this is something that we have really lacked, that is the influence on the creation of international institutions. This is what we couldn't do in the case of NATO and the European Union. And that's also why the international forms of cooperation, like the Visegrad Group and the Free Seas Initiative, are so close to our heart. There is nothing that could replace the Visegrad Group when it comes to our international cooperation. It was created 30 years ago, and the aim was to help us prepare our NATO and European Union accession. But this wasn't only that. We wanted to break away from the Soviet system, from the Soviet mentality, way of thinking together. And then we wanted to create our own rules. We wanted to express and preserve our Central European identity. And ladies and gentlemen, as Peter said, we are celebrating a lot of success. We can meet in the context of the Visegrad Group. We can meet as heads of states and governments. And I would also say that our international cooperation has a deep Visegrad dimension. It's about ministerial cooperation, but not only. We also managed to achieve a lot in Brussels in European diplomacy, thanks to our Visegrad cooperation. Peter discussed the economic dimension, and the dimension is of utmost political importance. And now a few words on our relationship with Germany. Where do Germans export the most? To the Visegrad Group. They export more to our region than to China, the United States, and to France. And we need to emphasize it. They export to our region significantly more than to Russia. So we need to understand our economic power. I don't know whether you know, but Poland exports a few times more to the Czech Republic, to Hungary, than to Russia. Is it a valid argument? When our partners do not agree with us when it comes to the European Union's policy towards Russia, that's the argument that we do not mention. But that's an issue that is very much present in the political discourse. Then, let me move on to the Free Sea Initiative. As Peter said, our international cooperation is centered around the V4 initiative, but we cannot forget about the Free Sea initiative. Do you remember the Sofia summit? There were representatives of Germany, Ukraine, of the United States, but also Japan was there. So that format of cooperation really attracts investors. There was also a very interesting meeting with the representatives of Japan in Warsaw, and they were very much interested in our Free Seas initiative. I would say that those who are not willing to see Poland succeed in their economy, they say that the Free Seas initiative is a competition for the European Union and European integration. But that's false. We need to have common infrastructure. We need to have common shared cybersecurity infrastructure. And we also need shared energy, power, roads infrastructure. This would help us to step up our European integration. Peter mentioned our economic gains. If we decide to do more business with one another, we will manage to catch up with the West much faster. And now, when it comes to the enlargement, I agree that Western Balkans have to become a member of the European Union. But we can't forget about the situation to the east of Poland. We need stability, we need safety in those countries to the east of Poland. The Lublin Triangle is a forum of cooperation which brings together Ukraine, Poland, and Lithuania. It brings together European, NATO, and non-NATO country. I hope that this triangle will become a square one day. And I hope I can also speak in the name of my Lithuanian counterpart, as well as my Ukrainian counterpart. And of course, what I have in mind is democratic Belarus. If it's achieved, we don't know when, but we are convinced that it will happen one day. Then the Europe of our dreams will become a fact. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, everything what is good ends too quickly. That's the Polish proverb. That was a fascinating debate. Thank you very much. And I hope there will be next opportunity to meet and to discuss. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for fascinating presentations.
The power and prestige of Parliament, effective soft power. This is parliamentary democracy that serves political agendas, foreign policy agendas. In a moment, foreign ministry officials of the 3 Cs initiative will discuss the parameters of the foreign policy. Before we start this, let's see a short video.
Panel zatytułowany Dyplomacja parlamentarna Trójmorza. Otóż wszyscy wiemy, czym jest Trójmorze i wiemy doskonale, że ma strukturę bardzo amorficzną. Nie ma nawet własnego sekretariatu. Jak wobec tego prowadzić konkretne działania na poziomie parlamentów, rządów czy innych instytucji, które by integrowały nasz region? I o tym właśnie będziemy mówić podczas naszego panelu dotyczącego dyplomacji parlamentarnej Trójmorza. Zapraszam serdecznie.
Witam Państwa serdecznie.
Hello, everyone. The video that you have seen has been recorded in a different sea, in the Aegean Sea, none of the seas that we are united by. And it so happens that I spent a week at Patmos, the island of Patmos, and I visited the cave where St. John had a vision and that gave way to his apocalyptic visions. But I will not discuss this. I will introduce us to the pollen policy of the 3 Cs initiative, as amorphic as it is, without its own secretariat even. So how do we build and develop a region without it? It is only natural for us to consider starting this collaboration at the level of parliaments. Hence, a question. How do Foreign Policy Select Committee heads in parliaments in this part of Europe imagine this? This discussion will be about the message that we need to develop in order to tighten the collaboration in the 3 Cs region. So what is your vision of the collaboration at the level of parliaments, and what is the role of specific MPs? Let me introduce our guests, our eminent panelists. Mrs. Rosalia Ibolia Biro, Chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Chamber of Deputies, Romania. Mr. Zsolt Németh, Chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs of the National Assembly in Hungary. Former Speaker of the Polish Parliament, Marek Kuchciński, Chair of the Committee on International Relations in the Polish Sejm. We're still waiting for our next panelist, Mr. Richard Kols, Chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs of Sejma in Latvia. Plus, we're going to hear from 2 individuals, Mr. Davor Ivo Stier, member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs of Parliament in Croatia, and Mr. Žiga Turk, former Minister of Education, Science and Culture and Sports of Slovenia. To begin with, I would like to give the floor to the only lady in our group, Mrs. Rosalia Ibolia Biro.
Thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen, honorable chairs, I am very honored to have the opportunity to be here, and thank you for Mr. President Kuchciński for his invitation. And for me, it's a big surprise the whole atmosphere from here, because yes, we say that it's Europe of Carpathians, but we can say also that it's Europe, and it is Europe of the citizens, and it is Europe of Carpathian citizens. So I think that we can say that we are a big family here, who has different members with different values maybe, with different objectives, but we have something very, very important in common. But I don't want to talk about, or I want to answer about your question first. And regarding of the opportunities in the parliamentarian level, I think that we are very, very rich representatives of our countries, because we have many, many tools to try to, first of all, represent our citizens, and the second, to represent our country, and the third, to be a representative of Europe, and to think like somebody who born here and who want to see his or her children living here in Europe. And maybe this is the, let's say, the most important objective of us, I think so, and it is a common one. So our parliamentary activity has to reflect this basic objective and this basic will of us, and we have to build our professional activity for on this. And regarding of the opportunity offered by this format of collaboration, yes, it is maybe not very clear how we can make a little bit effectiveness and make a little bit stronger our collaboration. But if we think about the tools of parliamentarians, we have many, many possibilities on that. I hope that this 1.5 years with online meetings will end it soon, and we will have again the possibility to see each other and to have formal and informal dialogue too. Till now, since the beginning, the 3Cs initiative, it is a format which developed from a year till another. We saw how near the political will, near the parliamentarian possibilities, now we have the actors from the economical side, how we try to invite the civil society representative to be part on this regional collaboration. And I hope that based on this dialogue, we will try also to invite our citizens, our youth and our elder people to think together here in Central and Eastern Europe.
Dziękuję bardzo za tą wypowiedź z perspektywy rumuńskiej.
Statement from the Romanian perspective. Let me hand over to our representative, our guest from Hungary, and I know that the two nations may differ on occasion on several matters, but I am hoping that you will have more common currency when it comes to 3Cs. Mr. Zsolt Németh, over to you.
Thank you very much, especially for the invitation. I am very honored that we can be together with Mr. Marshal Puchczynski. We have been closely working together in the past decades in different situations. I would like to welcome the 30th Economic Forum. however, not anymore in Krynica, but in Krynica we all remember. We have been many times together, at least every second year I could participate on those events, and I hope that this relocation of Krynica into Karpacz will be a successful exercise. And I am very glad that you have saved the Europa Karpat brand, and we are in the Carpathians, and actually you are coming from the Carpathians, and we have some still of the Carpathian, so I am thrilled by the idea of Europa Karpat, and this is in the heart of the Three Seas initiative. Because the Three Seas initiative is fundamentally, it is not an organization. It is about a big, very important, relevant political project that we could hear from the two foreign ministers in the past 1 hour. They spoke about Central Europe, building Central Europe, and this is the most important mission of the Three Seas initiative, to create, to recreate Central Europe, which in the 20th century has been destroyed. At the First World War, at the Second World War, under communism, and we are now probably in a possibility, in an economic conditionality as well, to start to build a strong Central Europe. Is it possible? If not, probably that is the subject of our discussion today. The Three Seas initiative is a young player in this game. It has 5 years history, but as it was said, the Economic Forum is 30 years, and Carpat Europa is always in the focus of the Economic Forum, and the Visegrad cooperation is also 30 years old. We are just celebrating, and Poland has just finished this summer the presidency of the Visegrad, the 30th year of Visegrad, and with Mr. Marek Kuchcinski we had a lot of work together and many successes on the level of parliamentary diplomacy, which I would like to congratulate. And now I am in the position, and I am quite scared that you have a very high standard on the level of Foreign Affairs Committee chairmanship successes, which we would like to meet as a high standard. So the Three Seas initiative was launched 5 years ago. It was the project of the 2015 elected Polish government, but the idea behind is older, and all of our governments have been working into the direction of the Three Seas initiative. It was started on the level of the presidents, and gradually the governments joined up to the presidents, and now the governments are getting more and more involved into the Three Seas project. A crucial question was the fund, the investment fund, which was a turning point in the history of the Three Seas initiative, and the dedication of the majority of the member states to participate in the investment fund was crucial. And probably we will have the opportunity to talk about it. And then the Parliament had a very important starting meeting this summer under the auspices of the Polish presidency. And the 3rd of June, the parliamentary speakers of the 3 Seas countries had their first ever meeting, and they agreed that they will meet every year, and they will encourage the foreign and the economic affairs committees, our committees, to follow their example and to do the same and to take on the agenda the problems of the 3 Seas in this format as well. Probably it is not a secret to many of you that the V4 Foreign Affairs Committees do meet, and not just by ourselves, but we sometimes invite the Western Balkans, the Eastern partners. We had 2 meetings with the organization of Mr. Kuczynski, with our Baltic colleagues, and that's why I hope Mr. Kohls is going to arrive in a few minutes, because he's in front of the door, supposedly, but he cannot get through. But we had very substantial meetings in V4 plus B3 format. And hopefully the very clear focus of this initiative will supplement all the other regional organizations and initiatives. We don't see any fundamental conflict between these regional initiatives. The focus of the 3 Seas initiative is building up a north-south infrastructural backbone for the Central European cooperation. We have been for long decades, basically a century, just a crossroad between East and West. German and Russian troops were crossing across this region. It was an east-west highway. Now it is high time to build up a north-east cooperation in infrastructure, in the broadest sense of infrastructure, transport, digital, energy, and so on. And obviously it can be broadened, and we hope that it will be a strong network which will be the backbone of the renewing Central European cooperation.
Dziękuję bardzo. Pan Zsolt Nemeth
Thank you very much. Zsolt Nemeth mentioned speakers Kuczynski's experience when it comes to international cooperation in the format of the 3 Seas and in the format of the Visegrad Group. But the 3 Seas is a bit different when it comes to international parliamentary cooperation. So how do you envisage that kind of cooperation within the 3 Seas format? First of all, welcome to Carpathians. I'm very happy that we can meet here together with Rosalia Ibolia Bureau, together with Zsolt Nemeth from the National Assembly of Hungary, with Richard Kohls, who is going to join us shortly, and a few other friends. Now, during the pandemic, we have had many online contacts. We got in touch through video conferencing devices. We had many conversations. We talked about the importance to make our parliamentary cooperation stronger and closer, taking into account all those arguments that you have raised. Taking into account 30 years of a transition, of a democratic transition in Central Europe, taking into account all those years and all the achievements, at the same time, we cannot forget about our future goals and challenges. We need to cooperate closer. We need to understand one another better. That's one of our biggest challenges, and this is our basic goal. We need to create the right conditions for our countries, families, and nations to develop. For this to happen, we need good neighborly relations and cooperation. We have been cooperating in different formats for hundreds of years. I could say even for 1,000 years. We know one another quite well. So since the first Visegrad meeting, since the 14th century, we've been cooperating. We have known one another. Our outlook on life is quite similar, and then we are neighbors. So it's closer. It's easier to have a meeting. It's easier to move. In the context of the Three Seas initiative, our governments have decided that we need to strengthen infrastructure. Without communication, without transport, we won't be really close. And then, to complement our cooperation, I think that we need the parliamentary dimension. I'm convinced that parliamentary cooperation should be a very important component. Our parliaments take decisions, they approve policies, they can support our international cooperation. This is how we build stability and the sense of safety. This is how we build friendly relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, our international cooperation, also non-governmental cooperation. Here, Grzegorz Górny, our moderator, is the head of a Three Seas Initiative Association. So, our cooperation has to be multifaceted. It needs to encompass our local governments as well. Cooperation on the local level between our countries is really effective. I think that the parliamentary diplomacy should be about creating a very dense network of connections. We need to use the synergies of the Visegrad Group, and I believe that our cooperation should spread to the whole Central European region. And I believe that our main goal is to develop cooperation, communication, transport between the north and the south of Europe. And I think that this has been overlooked for decades. So I believe that the parliamentary dimension is a kind of a liquid that makes communication possible. It's like this intercellular liquid that helps our body cells to communicate. Thank you very much for your presentation. I've just learned that Richard Coles won't make it. He has encountered some unexpected difficulties. And now I would like to give the floor to Davor Ivoshtin, who is following our debate from Budapest. And he is the member of Croatian Chamber of Deputies.
Well, greetings from Zagreb, actually, from the Croatian Parliament, and thank you to the Economic Forum for the organization of this panel discussion about the parliamentary dimension of the Three Seas initiative. We certainly here from Croatia welcome this initiative. We, of course, have been participating from the very beginning, from the summit in Dubrovnik. And as Zsolt has said, although the initiative at the beginning was launched at the level of the heads of state, now our governments, our executive branches are getting more and more involved. And of course, the turning point was the financing, the investment fund, and of course the participation, the important participation also of our US friends in it. Now, having said that, it's also true that we need or to recognize that there is, at least in some countries, a gap in terms of the citizens' perception and the visibility of the initiative. And here we see the role of the parliaments. So to have the publics, our general publics, more informed, engaged through their representatives, through the parliament. To raise also not just the visibility, but the awareness that we are talking about a region from the Baltic to the Adriatic and the Black Sea that actually comprehends 22% of the population of the European Union. That is a very dynamic region with a GDP that, if you took all the countries of the Three Seas Initiative combined, is bigger than the GDP of the Russian Federation or Canada, for example. But there is also a gap, for example, with our friends from West Europe when it comes to interconnectivity. If we have to measure that gap, some calculations said that this is a gap of even 3 billion or trillion euros and so on. So we need to work on that. We need to coordinate our policies, but we also need to have the accountability to our citizens. And here's where I see the role of parliamentarians. Now, Zsolt also mentioned the agreement of the speakers of our parliaments and the tasking to the heads of our committees for foreign affairs. I would add to that probably the tasking also to, in those cases where there is such a committee, to the committees on European policy, so that we have foreign affairs, European committees combined also with some committees that are working on energy, on transport, all the issues that are relevant to interconnectivity, and that we can have this structure of this structured dialogue at the parliamentarian level. I believe that we do not need at this moment to have a more institutionalized kind of parliamentary activity like a parliamentary assembly, which is the case with the Council of Europe or NATO or the OSCE. I believe that we do not need that for the Three Seas initiative, given the nature of this initiative. However, to have regular meetings and coordination of the chairman of our Foreign Affairs Committee, European committees, I believe that it would be an added value to the initiative that will bring more visibility and bring also more accountability in order to have our general publics involved and then more political support for such an important endeavor, such an important goal, and that is to reduce the gap in terms of interconnectivity when it comes to the Three Seas initiative in relation with Western Europe, and to raise the awareness of all the potentials that this region has.
Na szczęście informacja, którą otrzymałem, okazała się nieprawdziwa.
So luckily, the information about Richard was wrong. So Richard is here.
Ponieważ
with a slight delay, but he is here. He didn't hear my question, so let me repeat it. So how do you imagine, as a member of Latvian Parliament, parliamentary cooperation in the Three Seas region? So what might be the role of members of parliament, of the parliaments themselves, especially in the context of what is the most important for the Three Cs, that is infrastructure, transport, digitization, energy infrastructure, and so on.
Great, thank you. First of all, my apologies for being late, but that is due to, I mean, what I can say, Poland is in very safe hands. I mean, security-wise, a very secure country. Unfortunately, has some delay with the badges and so on. But nevertheless, it's thank you very much for having me on this panel. The Three Seas Initiative and Parliamentary Dimension. I don't know, of course, what you have talked already, but my assessment is that it's a crucial element in order to actually facilitate a coordinated, strategically laid out approach when we come to interconnectivity within the Central Eastern European countries, and particularly connecting the axis from the north to the south. Of course, you mentioned the three areas of priorities: the infrastructure, the energy security, and digital transformation. And when it comes to the parliaments, we know that actually for the parliamentarians, we are the ones who are in charge when it comes to budgetary affairs. We have the last saying on the finances. So therefore, we also are accountable to our constituents. And one thing is certain, that the whole Three Seas Initiative countries, 12 countries altogether, they account for 110 million people. And that, if you know, in the future development of the Three Seas Initiative, adding Ukraine, Moldova, and the Western Balkans, we can actually talk about 160. So this is also very much in a connection to explain to our constituents the necessity for this cooperation, because so far there are already parliamentary dimensions in our regions. You have your region, you have the Visegrad. In the Baltic countries, we have the Baltic Assembly, but there's even older one, which is the Central European Initiative. I mean, that is also at the parliamentary level. I don't know how many of you were actually actively following what is happening on the Central European Initiative. Can you tell me? Actually, that was my first learning of such a format. So I don't think we have to overthink on, right now at this stage, how to formalize the format. First thing is how to actually involve the parliaments in the discussions, debates on what is needed to be done, in what way, in what kind of way we approach the Three Seas Initiative. Another reason why to have the parliamentary dimension, any political decision in parliamentarianism is actually legalized through the parliament. We can have political parties with their political positions, but that necessarily means the legality of that decision. So therefore, parliaments and the parliament involvement gives the extra legitimacy to the decisions that are made among the Seas Initiative countries. Last but not least, I wanted to leave it to the end, but I have an announcement to make. Latvia will host the Three Seas Initiative Summit in Riga next year, summer. And we have already decided that, addition to the political dimension, which is the heads of state and the prime minister's level, on the business forum and NGO forum, we'll have also the parliamentary dimension. So we will have the Riga Summit Three Seas Initiative parliamentary dimension, where particularly it's not going to be so far as we had just the speakers of the parliament, but it will involve Foreign Affairs Committee. It will involve actually the European Affairs Committee members as well, because 3C's initiative is very much connected to the EU overall aims and objectives. Sorry, this is for the beginning. I understand we still have time.
Dziękuję bardzo. To jeszcze, żeby dopełnić tą pierwszą rundę.
Thank you very much. To complete the first round, let me ask Mr. Žiga, the former Minister of Education, Science and Sports of Slovenia, to take the floor.
Hello, I think I have to do something with it. You hear me okay?
Yes.
Right. Well, first of all, apologies. I cannot be present in person. Unfortunately, I have to be present through Zoom. But I'm very happy that I can be a part of this conference because, you know, the 3Cs, the Central Europe, these are concepts that have a ring also in a Slovenian ear. I scanned through the program and I think I'm the only person from Slovenia, which a little bit makes me sad. I'm also not active in politics right now. I've been former minister twice in the government of Slovenia. I'm active in policy making. And I would wish Slovenia would be more represented in forums like this. Maybe there's a little bit of conference fatigue. We had a big event, the Black Strategic Forum just last week, and people may be a little bit busy. But as I said, the 3Cs initiative, we share geography, we share history, we share experience, culture, we share interests. It's Central Europe, it's the part of Europe where we somehow feel at home at. The towns look the same. You have the cafes, you have the inner cities, you have the churches. I was looking through these beautiful backgrounds that we were supposed to put behind us, and I could easily mistake some of the scenery either from Slovenian Alps or from the Slovenian villages and cities. As the coordinator said, I've been minister in the Slovenian government twice. And actually it is possible. I have experiences of concrete, specific cooperation, whether it was within former or new member states, whether it was among the former communist countries, whether it was in the 3Cs. When I was Minister of Science, we had this debate at the Council for Research. The problem was, actually still is, it's a little bit smaller. The problem was, you know, the unequal pay between scientists in European research programs. So you would have a scientist from a university somewhere in Sweden, Finland, and they would charge like 10,000, 15,000 euros per month. You would have scientists in CE country who would maybe charge 2,000, 3,000 euros per month for basically the same kind of work. And we wanted to change the system so that there would be some kind of equal pay for equal work. There were some movements, but what it proved was that it was possible very quickly to get the ministers of these countries together, create an informal group, and actually show some strength in the council so that others would listen, so that others would do something about it. And the more recent experience is something that we were actually doing last year and this year through the pandemic. I'm switching the background now. It was an initiative on digitalization of Central and Eastern Europe. Interestingly, you know, the group was brought together by Atlantic Council. It was brought together by the Americans. Because they have found out that these countries might have similar interests, similar points of departure, similar views on some of the areas, on some of the topics of digitalization. These are not big countries. We don't have big incumbent players that we would want to help against the American rivals. We don't have this impression that we need to protect some local heroes. We just want Europe to advance as quickly as possible, and we want to have an advantage of a common European market to do so. And we produced this report on how we could build, how we could align our policies together, how we could collaborate in the area of digital, which is one of a couple of policy points where we are hoping to make big progress forward. Actually, in terms of economic figures, all these countries, also thanks to digital, are a little bit of European tigers. I mean, the growth rates in these countries are above the average of the growth rates of the European Union. Digital is a big part of that. And since you are talking about, institutionalizing the collaboration among the parliaments of this region, what we have proposed in this report is to create, to set aside a tiny fraction of the recovery budget that is dedicated in each country in digital, to create a kind of coordination among the CEE countries, how to use jointly in synergy the rest of these funds. So in conclusion, I would say, similarly, as I said in the beginning, we share history, we share geography, we share culture. We have very compatible ideas on many things, and we need to find concrete, specific projects in which we can collaborate, in which we can work together, in which we can exploit the synergies among us. And I will be looking forward for such collaborations on policy, on technology, on digital, if they come along.
Dziękuję bardzo za tą wypowiedź. Do tej pory mieliśmy tutaj wypowiedzi.
So far, we've heard highly general statements. I suggest that we move down to the nitty-gritty, but because we have a shortage of time, because we started with a delay, and we are soon having a plenary meeting upstairs, and some of our participants will have to attend, we will have to squeeze some of our statements now. Having said that, let me ask a specific question. What are the transport, infrastructure, energy or digitization projects that you want to promote in your parliaments? What sort of projects would you like to focus on soon? And why do you believe it's important? And please take maximum 2 minutes. Let's start with Mrs. Biro.
Thank you. I know the limit is a limit, but please allow to me just one sentence about the concrete steps, because I want to say about the concrete steps what is, in my opinion, very important to do it in the parliamentarian dimension. I don't know the experience of the honorable chairs from here, but the experience, my experience in our parliament is that when we talk about collaboration at the regional level, then sometimes we have different, let's say, not position, but different tools and different activities at the different levels, governmental level, parliamentarian level, local level, and so on. So I don't know if this could be a proposal, but it will be something what I will do it going home from here. It will be to initiate a subcommittee inside of the Foreign Affairs Committee, which will, let's say, managed in the parliamentarian dimension the activity regarding the 3Cs initiative. And about your question, very simple. For us, it is very, very important energetic security, and it's very important to have a clean energy and to assure that the opportunities about what we have will developed in this field.
Dziękuję bardzo. Pan Zsolt Neymet.
Thank you very much. I would like to make also one announcement after my Latvian friend. Hungary is still open and ready to host the Secretariat of the Three Seas Initiative, as we think that if we are serious, a Secretariat is needed to coordinate and to stabilize the work of the Three Seas Initiative. And we are, in this regard, very optimistic with the Latvian presidency, because it seems that now probably it will be a qualitative change in the work of the Three Seas Initiative. I'm not impatient at all, because I think the 5 years result, what have been produced with this originally Polish idea, it is your idea, I think it is fantastic. The second remark I would like to make, that probably it is high time, my colleagues, that we inform our public that we have written a letter to our American colleagues that we expect the American new administration to continue the commitment of the previous American administration to participate in the investment fund of the Three Seas Initiative, and we look forward to the cooperation with towards our American colleagues in this regard. And thirdly, I think the most important at this stage is the Via Carpathia. The Via Carpathia is a highway project from the Baltics down to the Adriatic and to the Black Sea. The last component of the Hungarian Via Carpathia is the Miskolc-Kosice highway, and we are going to complete this component this year. So the end of this year, the Hungarian component of the Via Carpathia, the highway, will be ready. I similarly find important that on the long run, we need to take very seriously the speed train communication, the Rail Baltica. As you know, the Visegrad capitals are going to be connected, and I hope that the Rail Baltica will tap into this. And finally, the energy communication. This is an important year, 2021, as we are having an LNG connection from the south, and we hopefully are going to see soon the Slovak-Polish interconnector, and from the Polish LNG terminal also LNG can arrive to the landlocked countries like Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję bardzo. To samo pytanie do pana Richarda Kolsa.
Well, it's a very good question for the parliamentarians, and I will tell you honestly, I don't think that, for example, in Latvia, where we have 100 MPs, I think generally only around 10 MPs know what is Three Seas Initiative, knows what kind of projects have been identified, and this is precisely where we have to expand the understanding, the importance of Three Seas Initiative. Yes, you mentioned the Carpathian road initiative, where we have the Rail Baltic, but this is something that already started 10 years ago, and it's not actually, a part of Three Seas Initiative. We are labeling right now. It comes naturally that now it seems to interconnect, and it's part of the Three Seas Initiative. I mean, from Latvia's point of view, of course, I will tell you as well, it's the Rail Baltica, and it's also the energy security related interconnection with the Central Europe. But I think we have to already think beyond that. when it comes to digital transformation. Rail Baltic, it's not only the high-speed train, it also involves the technology that we are actually pioneering in the Baltic region. It's the 5G introduction when it comes also to the businesses. How we can transform the transportation altogether using the 5G technology. And this is something where I think why we need the parliamentary dimension is to understand where each of the countries that are part of the 3Cs initiative stand. Sort of say the draw a line. This is the starting point. If we are about to move ahead together and to collaborate, to cooperate, to understand, because not all member states of the 3Cs initiative are actually part of the 3Cs initiative fund. Not all of them. So why? Why is the hesitation? And this is something where we need a political discussion among the legislators. Maybe there are some stumbling blocks that are actually connected to bilateral issues. And don't let exclude that so far conceptually we have a lot of things done, identified, allocated financing, still not the maximum. But when we come to the implementation of the cross-border projects, I think we're going to face a lot of challenges when it comes to bilateral relations. And I think this is precisely why we need the broader parliamentary dimension where we can speak with each other, not just against each other, in that kind of way. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo i na koniec to samo pytanie do pana marszałka Marka Kuchcińskiego.
The last question over to Marszałek Kuchciński.
So I would speak to what has been said, and I agree that we need to concentrate on the infrastructure, so transport, energy, communication. That's the basis. And then what Richard Coles mentioned, like that is small steps to big and strong parliamentary cooperation, so that's the way to go. We can assume that in each mandate we will just deepen our cooperation, and parliamentary cooperation is a key to achieving our strategic goals, irrespective of who is in power. I think that for over 100 years we haven't had a better situation and better perspectives for development than now. Thank you very much. I hope that our guests have come here to start a new chapter of our parliamentary cooperation. Thank you very much. Thanks for your attention. I would like to thank our guests for coming and for listening to this discussion, and I would like to invite you to participate in the next panel, and I also have certificates for our participants.